That this would be a disastrous year for ancient American cultures is evidenced in the fact that this is 1687-1686 of the Olmec calendar, paralleling the 1687 BC year of our Gregorian dating. Further, this was 3552 Anunnaki chronology, this being a golden proportion number, being 1776 plus 1776. This dating reflects a future disaster in 713 BC, the 2400th year of the Mayan long count, when the solar year will be changed from 360 days a year to 365.25 due to a near collision between Earth and the dark satellite. This year of 1687 BC was 1426 of the Mayan calendar from 3113 BC, or 713 plus 713 years. This transit of Phoenix ends the early Bronze Age, and the demographics of the ancient world is altered. The date is fixed by the rape of Dinah in 1687 BC, by the chronological records of the Book of Jasher, and by the biblical chronologist Stephen Jones in his Secrets of Time. For more on this catastrophe, see When the Sun Darkens. 1. Genesis. 2. Jasher. Secret Cities of Old South America. 4. Voyages of the Pyramid Builders. 5. Survivors of Atlantis. 6. Children of the Sun. 8. Augustine, City of God, Book 18. 9. Augustine, City of God, Book 21. 10. Survivors of Atlantis. 11. The Greek Myths. 14. Egypt, Greece and Rome. 15. Ancient Civilizations. 16. The World's Most Mysterious Objects. 17. Our Haunted Planet. 18. Survivors of Atlantis. 19. Fingerprints of the Gods. 21. Elder Gods of Antiquity. Global disasters and the early Bronze Age. Middle to late Bronze Age begins. 1686 BC, 2209 AM. Rachel, aged 45, gives birth to Benjamin and dies from labour complications. Benjamin is the only son of Jacob, born after his name is changed to Israel. 1 Genesis. 1679 BC, 2216 AM. The 12 sons of Leah sell the firstborn son of Rachel, Joseph, into slavery at age 17 to a merchant caravan travelling into Egypt. In Egypt, he is sold into the slave market in the service of an Egyptian military official known as Potiphar, whose wife sought by various stratagems to seduce the young Joseph into an affair. This situation and her treacherous accusation landed him in prison, and the story is the source of the Egyptian Tale of Two Brothers, which is preserved upon an ancient Egyptian papyrus in the British Museum. The sons of Leah return and tell Jacob, their father, that Joseph was killed by a wild animal. This was the 108th year of the life of Jacob and Esau. 1 Genesis, Jasher. 1667 BC, 2228 AM. Isaac dies at age 180, born in 1847 BC. His sons Jacob and Esau are 120 years old. Augustine wrote that in this year the third king of Argos was now ruling, named Apis. This was 670 years since the birth of Shem, before the flood in 2337 BC. This year, 280, 70 times 4, from Abraham's birth, 210 years, 70 by 3 after the institution of the Abrahamic covenant in 1877 BC, and 140, 70 times 2. 1 Genesis. 2 Augustine, City of God, Book 14. 1666 BC, 2229 AM. After several years in prison, Joseph interprets a dream for Pharaoh. He was falsely accused of rape by Potiphar's wife. Dreams troubled the king of Egypt, and Joseph was summoned to interpret them after his unique ability was made known through other prisoners. The dream concerns 7 years of plenty that Egypt would enjoy, followed by 7 years of severe famine. Joseph is instantly elevated in status. and proclaimed as Prime Minister of all Hyksos-controlled Egypt at 30 years old, exactly 13 years after being sold into slavery by his brothers, the sons of Leah. Joseph is Prime Minister under a Hyksos king, and it was under these rulers, the shepherd kings of Mesopotamia and Canaan, that the Israelites would flourish. The shepherd kings were an amalgamation of Canaanite-speaking people of Syria-Palestine. Like the Israelites, the Hyksos venerated Seth, who was regarded as Lord of Lower Egypt. Joseph lives in a palace at On, Memphis, the ancient city of Anu that would later be called Heliopolis, the centre of Hyksos government, and he is remembered as the famous and most revered Djoser. Djoser is de Djoser, who was in Phoenicia called Iosepe, the Io resolving to the modern J for Giuseppe, Joseph. This is the year 1447 of the Mayan calendar, paralleling the year 1447 BC, 2448 AM, when the Israelites are led out of Egypt by Moses. 1. Genesis. 3. Phoenicians. 4. God Kings of Outremer. 5. The Christ Conspiracy. 1663 BC, 2232 AM. In this year Joseph turns 34, and he is married to a high priest's daughter. In this year she gives birth to twin boys, who are given Egyptian names. These two boys have a special destiny, becoming patriarchs of two more tribes that will be adopted into the Israelite families. These two will become the patriarchs over whole companies of nations and famous empires in the future. They will be renamed in 1639 BC. The prophet Isaiah wrote that in the days of Joseph, the king of Egypt was a Syrian. The calendrics for this year are stunning and convey the importance of these two sons of Joseph. As 2232 Annus Mundi, this is 744 times 3. This is the year 1776 from the descent of the Watchers, a year in the Anno Domini timeline that will begin the United States of America. This was 1440 years after the start of the Black Age, the Kali Yuga being 144 times 10. This was 1152 or 144 times 8 years after the completion of the Great Pyramid in 2815 BC. The Great Pyramid being the ancient seal of Israel, as it is also the seal of the United States. It was at the very site of Goshen, the land around the Great Pyramid, where the Israelites lived in Egypt. This year was 576 years after the deluge, or 144 times 4. The Abrahamic covenant was reaffirmed in 1807 BC, 144 years earlier. 1 Isaiah. 1659 BC, 2236 AM. The Great Famine begins and would last for 7 years, predicted through the interpretation of Pharaoh's dream. This dearth would afflict northern Africa, Canaan and parts of Mesopotamia. This is precisely 680 years from the birth of Japheth, or 244800 days, 2448 number of cataclysm in ancient Egypt, from birth of Japheth in 2339 BC. This year was also the 576th year, 144 times 4, from curse of Ham by Noah in 2235 BC. Abraham had been born 288 years, 144 times 2, earlier in 1947 BC. 1658 BC, 2237 AM. Joseph's brothers travel to Egypt to buy food, where they meet their own little brother but do not recognize him. Joseph is prime minister and is in all respects Egyptian. 1657 BC, 2238 AM. The sons of Jacob and Leah, with Benjamin the son of Rachel, are sent back to Egypt from Canaan to buy more food. Joseph, prime minister of Egypt, known as Djoser, is 39 years old, and he meets his brothers and reveals his identity to them. Jacob is told that his long-lost beloved son is alive and second in command of Egypt. The house of Israel moves into Egypt and given the land of Goshen around the Great Pyramid complex, the same place that was the center of Sethite pre-flood civilization. Jacob is 130 years old. Toward the end of this year is exactly 1447 years after start of the Vedic calendar in 3103 BC. The year 1447 BC being the exodus of Israel out of Egypt. This year begins Israel's first year in Egypt. The house of Israel is at this time numbered at 70. However, Ephraim and Manasseh, the two sons of Joseph, Diosa, would later be adopted into Israel by Jacob in 1639 BC, making this number 72. This year is 1656, 552 times 3 years, to the first year of Christ in 1 BC, 1 Genesis, Numbers, Jasher.